classic fearful avoidant. When the relationship is not chaotic, I find it boring and I'll stay away from it. When the relationship is chaotic, I'm like, I'll stick to that. And then obviously that has its own side effects. That was my life.
Hello, and welcome to the Personal Development School podcast. I am so excited you're here. I am your co-host, Thais Gibson, along with our new special host, Mike DeZio. This is a podcast that discusses everything related to integrated attachment theory, the new attachment theory, along with the subconscious mind, relationships, communication, needs, boundaries, and so much more. Throughout this podcast, you'll see a series of episodes I upload with new information, educational tips all about how to thrive in relationships and really master your emotional state in your life, along with special guests hosted by Mike DeZio to discuss all of these amazing topics in some longer form content. Thank you so much for being here, and I really hope you enjoy this episode.
My guest today is a data engineer and is passionate about personal development and coaching. She's certified in Thais Gibson's Integrated Attachment Theory program, and she helps people to make sustainable plans to get unstuck in their careers and personal lives. Podcast viewers and listeners, I'd like to welcome Athira Das. Hello, Athira. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Mike?
Very good. Thanks for joining us today. So, Athira, I just want to start out. You want to briefly let our audience know kind of about your background, your backstory. You want to touch on what life was like growing up?
Yeah, so I grew up in India. I'm from a place called Kerala, in southern part of India. So I did my undergrad and schooling over there, and then I was working in the tech sector in Bangalore, again in India for like 3 years, and then I moved to the US in 2016 for my master's. I did schooling. I did my master's in Chicago, and then right now I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area working in one of the tech companies as a data engineer. Growing up, it was kind of interesting, like that typical Indian parenting and Indian culture and everything. Very sometimes it's like very demanding. Like it's not just the parents, right? The entire culture is kind of like asking you to do more and more, which kind of creates all these core wounds. So it was interesting, and for me personally, coming over here and like getting familiarized with the American way of living. I'm not saying that one is better or one is worse or anything like that, but it was slightly different. And I'm trying to understand, like, okay, what happened to me while growing up, and it's what I thought was like normal was not really normal. In the culture, it was normal, but like now when I look back at it, I'm just like, okay, these are the things that created all these core wounds and all that. So yeah, that's my background. And I like my family is like my mom, dad, and I have a brother. So my dad passed away a few months ago. So yeah, that's my family.
Okay, thanks for sharing, Athira. I was just curious for anyone who doesn't know, like Indian culture, would you say just due to the fact there's like a billion plus people in the country, there's a lot of pressure and, did you have a lot of expectations, a lot of pressure on your shoulders to sort of perform and do well for the family? Was it that type of pressure going on?
Yeah, so I think it's the culture of a developing country, right? Like so I grew up in a middle class family in India. So education is very important. The only way to kind of um, achieve something in life is to get like a good education, get a good job. So the overall culture is framed, for like be good at studies. And so if you're earning like if you got like 98 out of 100, then the question would be like, oh, where did that 2 marks go? That's the kind of culture over there. And if you're good at studies, you'll get rewarded. If you're not good at studies in the traditional system, right? You get rewarded. So that's and too much of focus on uh, following a traditional path, like you do go to school, then go to engineering, get a degree in engineering. So there are like only, I would say, two jobs which are considered to be good in India, like
Right,
engineering and medicine.
right.
Everything else is like maybe law also could be, I don't know, it could be different. So that's it. So if you don't end up doing any of these, you're like a failure. So a lot of children, like uh, growing up kind of feel like, so my brother, he's in the creative space, he's actually doing cinematography. and he was criticized for choosing that career. Like, people were like, oh, you don't want to study, that's why you took that job, which is not the reality. So,
Yeah.
um, in terms of like choosing your life, there is like certain paths that you can choose, which are established and which are successful. And if you if you do something different than that, then it's not good or it's not ideal. So,
For sure.
I did the traditional path, and now I'm like, a part of it was societal pressure than my passion. So yeah,
Right. Right, right. And kudos to your brother to kind of take the non-traditional path because, approval from our parents is really a big thing, right? So if we're going against them and they're not sort of giving us their blessings, it can be, a lot of worry and fear and anxiety. But
yeah,
I think most parents, once they see that you're actually like doing okay and making money and made a good career for yourself, then they kind of ease up. But totally understand
yeah,
how, yeah, they sort of want you to be in like a high profile career right away. Um,
yeah.
that's great. Thanks for sharing. So I'm going to talk about your own personal healing. Like for your own life, was there a moment? Was there a catalyst? Like at what point did you say, okay, I need to sort of dive into my own healing? Like this sort of this needs to be paid attention to.
Yeah, similar to like many people who join PDS, like I also started discovering about like attachment style and everything after a breakup. Um, but I think more than the breakup, I realized that I am not very sure what that I was in fearful avoidance. So basically, that a flip flop. You experience that flip flop in everything, like relationships, friendships, career, everywhere. So more than the breakup, I was like, I need to figure out what's happening in my head.
Sure.
So I've had phases where you hit the kind of like rock bottom, and then I consider myself as like a pretty resilient person. So I'll come out of that. I'll be okay in life, but I'm not addressing the root cause of that issues. So I'm just like coping by. So my coping mechanism was like my career. I kind of invested everything in my career, and I'm growing in my career. Then I'm happy. But everything else is like a mess, like including relationships, right? So, and relationships also, I was like a classic fearful avoidant. When the relationship is not chaotic, I find it boring and I'll stay away from it. When the relationship is chaotic, I'm like, I'll stick to that. And then obviously that has its own side effects. So
Right.
that was my life. And, I think after that breakup, which happened in 2021, I was like, I need to figure out what's happening to me. And that's how I discovered the school and like started my healing journey.
Right, right. So you mentioned that you came into the school because of a breakup. Was it sort of surprising, or were you just kind of shocked at how, after a while, you get to learn more about yourself instead of sort of focusing more on the other person and healing from the breakup? Did you sort of benefit in all the other ways that make you look inside and sort of deal with your own wounds?
Yeah, so in the beginning, it was all about the other person. Like, I just wanted to understand what's happening with the other person so that I can kind of like fix the relationship. I did not know something was like bothering me or something was like wrong with uh, me. Like, I was like, oh, this is how it is, this
Mhm.
is how relationships should be. I think in the beginning, it was like that. Like the first couple of months, it was all about understanding the other attachment style. But later, so initially I thought I was an EP because I was with an avoidant person, and like I was very anxious. I was pulled back to my anxious side, and I thought I was an EP, and I started watching Thais' course, and I'm like, okay, this like, to be honest, like my trust issues were showing up like there itself. Like I didn't even trust like PDS or Thais. I was like, oh, this is just like a marketing thing.
Yeah.
She's just like talking about all these things in the YouTube video because people will enroll and like she can make money. That's what I was thinking.
Hmm. Hmm.
But then there was like the free 7-day course. I was like, okay, I'll check this out, and then like if it's good, I'll continue. Otherwise, I'll stop. And then I binged like the all avoidant like DA videos in the beginning, and then I started watching AP because in the test also I was showing up as AP.
Right.
But I couldn't relate to it completely. Like there are certain things that like I could relate to it, but certain things I couldn't. And then I discovered that there's something called like fearful avoidance. Let me just watch that course as well, just out of curiosity. And then when I watched that video, I was like, oh, this is me. And I think after that, I kind of like understood that I need to like fix these things, and I started focusing on myself and my journey. So in the beginning, it was all about the other person, maybe for like a few weeks. And then after that, it was just all about me. It was really fascinating to kind of understand what's happening in my brain. So it was almost like I
Yeah.
felt like she was talking to me, when I was
Yeah.
watching their courses. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, it's so interesting. I think your stories, like so many others, they come into the school and it's all about kind of like why did this happen? Why did this other person do that? Like a lot of focus is on the other person, but then when you start to see that, well, it's kind of your wounds that are attracting you and keeping you in these sort of unhealthy dynamics, not consciously, like you're not, obviously people don't want to be in an unhealthy relationship and they won't choose
Yeah.
people who treat them bad or disrespect them or don't meet their needs. But if the subconscious comfort zone in the way that you're treating yourself, if you're not meeting your own needs, if you're not paying attention to yourself, if you're not being vulnerable with your own self, you're setting up the subconscious comfort zone for someone else to be reinforcing those things. So it's really wonderful how, because we could all leave someone if they're unhealthy, and a lot of people are always like, oh, leave that person, he's toxic, he's toxic. But if you haven't changed the core wounds that sort of led you
Yeah.
to that dynamic in the first place, the next person you're going to be with is kind of going to be like the same story. And I'm sure we could all notice sort of if we look at our patterns of people that we've dated, if we don't do any healing work, it's kind of like the same type of situations over and over and over.
Yeah,
So I'm
I
really
have a
glad.
funny.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to add, like you mentioned, like toxic relationships, right? Like when you are unhealed, you don't even realize those are like toxic relationship. Like for me, I was like, oh, this is how it should be. Like, and
Yeah,
there's a lot of romanticization happening in the media and movies and everything where, oh yeah, a relationship should be like with all the drama and like all
yeah,
the
yeah,
chaos.
yeah.
And yeah, you're believing it in a way. Yeah.
It's so true. Like you said, if that's your norm, if you grew up in sort of chaos, then chaos to you feels extremely normal. And these giant
Yeah.
emotional swings and fights and makeups and all that stuff, that feels like a normal relationship, right? So
Yeah.
it's really interesting. So I was curious, like, how long ago did you hear about attachment theory, and like, did you have like an aha moment where you're like, oh my gosh, I need to dive into this a little more?
Yeah, I heard about like I kind of started researching about attachment theory around like 2021, right before I found PDS. Initially I was just curious, but like once I discovered the attachment style, um, especially about like fearful attachment, avoidant attachment style, I think the most fascinating thing about understanding why you are the way you are, that was like important. Like, um, growing up in the chaotic environment and that kind of resulting in your attachment style and the way you look at the world and romantic relationships. That was interesting for me. And the flip flop, like there are moments like this is a bit before periods. I think um, I'm like asking myself, like, what do you want? Like, do you want to be in a relationship or do you not want to be in a relationship? Because
Mm,
I'm very happy when I'm not in a relationship. I'm very independent and self-sufficient. But at the same time, I want a relationship. The moment you get into a relationship, it doesn't feel good. So I asked myself, like, okay, what is that you want? Like, just make up a decision, make a decision and like, move on. But when I was watching the Fearful Avoidant course, I was like, okay, this is what I'm going through. Like, that inability to kind of commit to a relationship at the same time, wanting that was kind of interesting. And the overall like core wounds, like, she talks about like you have some sort of a shield in front of you, which is covered with all these core wounds, and then you view the world through those through that lens. And that was kind of interesting, like the same one incident that when you look through the lens of this core wounds, the incident looks like slightly different. So I think core wounds plus the whole understanding about FA attachment style was fascinating, and
yeah,
it was like a aha moment for me.
definitely. That's amazing. I'm so happy to hear that. So I know you obviously mentioned you're fearful avoidant. When you were in sort of the height of your fearful avoidant state, what was some of the most like difficult parts about being a fearful avoidant attachment style?
Yeah, For me, like specifically in terms of like relationships, I would say that I wanted that extra drama in relationships. Like I wanted that chaos. And before PDS, like the relationship that I were in, had that like extra chaos, and I thought that is how it should be. And it's not like I didn't meet any uh, good men or secure men. I
Mhm.
did, but when there is like calmness and stability and security in the relationship, I'm like, no, this is boring, and I don't want that. Like we hear that like often, FAs mentioning that secure relationships are like just boring, and I did feel that, and so it's kind of interesting now when I look back at my relationships or like people that I've met, like it's not even doesn't even reach to a relationship stage with secure men in the past life. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was like I was actually pushing them away when they were consistent and when they were giving me what I wanted. And I would stick with people who are like making my life chaotic. So looking back, it just makes total sense. But that time I thought that is how it should be.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for sure. And I know you're very like career focused, career driven. Career is a big part of your life. How did your attachment style affect you at work specifically?
Yeah, at work, I would say so when I started doing PDS, I was like, this is just for relationships. It'll help you to become secure and find secure relationship. And I was just focused on that. But once I started doing the work, it's like that's like an important thing that I want to share with like people also. Like it's not like the relationship that will get improved. Every single area, like your career, financial, physical, mental, everything will get improved. And for me, the I started seeing a lot of changes pretty early in my career area of life. Like relationship took some more time because it was a little more deeper and scary for me. But career, I started seeing changes. Like I was comfortable in saying no to people, like setting up boundaries, um, and also some of the code wounds of like not enough, not worthy, imposter syndrome. I did feel like I'm like faking it at work. So those things like got like improved a bit, improved a lot. And then I would say that chaos, right? Like this, I used to have this like burnout phase and then like there's a recovery phase. So that also changed a bit. And I would say the needs, like needs was also another thing. Like what are the needs that are met in my career so that I can show up better at work and yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of things. I would say the way I look at career also changed. Like my job also changed after the years.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you mentioned that. It's so true. Like, not just, it doesn't just affect romantic relationships. That's sort of the primary thing that a lot of people focus on. But really, when you eliminate some of these core wounds, by nature, you're going to be making improvements in a lot of different areas. If you have a like, I'm not good enough core wound, definitely that's going to affect maybe your finances, where you might not feel
Mhm.
worthy, or like an I'm unworthy core wound, like you might not feel worthy of abundance or making a lot of money. So it's really wonderful how, yes, you can work on these for your relationships, but these core wounds, they go deep and they affect all areas of life. So, and career especially. So that's really great that you made those shifts. I was just doing some research on some videos, and it was showing attachment style um, challenges in the workplace, but also sort of superpowers. So each insecure attachment style, it shows they have challenges. Like DAs might not be want to be like team oriented, and they might not take place in the interpersonal relationships as much. So some people might view them as a little more cold or not caring, but they also have a superpower of being able to work independently and applying logic and intellect to situations. So everybody kind of has a balance, but it's good to look at your superpowers or the advantage you have, but also you want to know your challenges, because if they're like a blind spot and then you keep sort of, suffering, or you might even burn out from some of them, especially from fearful avoidant. Fearful avoidant have a lot of wounds that can sort of burn them out because they're, feeling they have to earn their worth and show their worth and, not say no to people, things like that. So I definitely, and you probably agree with this, that like doing this work, very helpful for a fearful avoidant in the workplace, specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I just want to add something like when you heal, there are a lot of good things or some of the traits that we acquired because of insecure attachment styles. Like one example is like DA being independent and all that, right?
Hmm.
Once you heal the attachment style, you are healing only the negative things, and all those strengths you can still keep it, and you kind of like become a
Right.
superhuman in a way. Like, you still have all those strengths, but at the
Yeah.
same time, you kind of remove the core wounds and everything, and that's just better for you. It's probably better than someone who is just like born secure. When you that's I would say it's a good thing. Like when you heal your attachment style, like you're healing from a place of struggle and all that, and it kind of makes you more resilient and appreciate yourself more than maybe like someone who's just like born secure.
Right. I love that you mentioned that because I think sometimes you're worried that you're going to lose some of the things that are really helpful, like for fearful avoidance, sometimes hypervigilance is
Yeah.
one of their superpowers. So, if they're in a job where they need to notice changes in behavior, if you're a therapist or a doctor or a lawyer, like really beneficial to be able to note like the slightest shifts in behavior. And yeah, you might be worried like, geez, like this really helps me in my job. I'm going to lose this, but you'll still maintain some of those things, and also, like you said, get rid of some of the things that are causing you, pain and suffering.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So thanks for bringing that up. So previously to doing the work, what are some examples of issues that would come up for you in relationships, specifically over and over?
Yeah, relationships, I think one thing was not like setting up boundaries,
Okay.
speaking up for myself. I think that was one huge problem I had. Like, I was not able to tell, like, this is what I need and this is what I expect. And, I'll just keep, quiet. So the unseen, unheard core wound was just playing all that over there. So, that has changed like tremendously. Like in my current relationship, I'm like, we are able to communicate, like, hey, this is not working out. Like, this is something I would like to change in the relationship. And,
Right.
that has changed quite a bit. And also, I would say, like, just understanding my own needs, right? Like, what am I expecting in a relationship? What are my needs in a relationship? Those were not very clear for me. I didn't even know that there was something called needs for PDS. So,
Yeah. Same.
yeah, I think, yeah, most of us are like that. Like, there's something called needs. Okay, interesting.
Right.
I would say that's the main, like communicating, speaking up for myself, understanding my needs, setting up boundaries, and also like this balance of everything in life, right? Like relationship is one part of it, and there are other things like you don't have to go all or nothing in your life, and that's another classic trait of a fearful avoidant. When they're in a relationship, they're like fully into it or like completely out of it. So I've you don't have to be like that. You can have balance in life, and you don't need chaos. That's, I would say, one of the biggest learnings. You can have a peaceful relationship where you communicate everything, where there is transparency and mutual trust.
Yeah.
um that was very alien to me at that time.
For sure. Yeah, I definitely can relate to the black and white thinking and all or nothing.
Mhm.
If somebody does something, somebody makes a mistake, you're like, I knew it. I can't trust this person. But really, like, you're going to make mistakes. Other humans are going to make mistakes. And, if we do apply the black and white thinking to everything, we're really going to have these like big swings, right? We need to sort of be able to see the gray area and have discussions around those things. But wonderful to hear that you now speak up if something's not sitting well with you or there's something you feel that like that's on your chest. Now you get to sort of share that and not have that like extreme fear of just sharing what's going on for you in a situation. That's really great. Okay, so I wanted to ask if anybody's listening who is fearful avoidant, what do you think, like, if they're starting this journey, what area do you think they should maybe first tackle, or what would you say to them is a good first place to start?
Yeah, I think for me personally, it was the stories in your head, like,
Mm,
understanding some of them are just stories. And it's okay. I think the first thing would be like accepting, okay, these stories exist in your head, and accepting it as just stories, and then try to question them. So basically the emotional processing tool, right? Like, okay, some stories is coming up, and then you kind of list down uh like opposing evidences of that stories, and sometimes the stories might be true, right? I think um that's a beauty about like hypervigilance. Sometimes you pick up something and sometimes it can be true, but
Hmm.
even if it's true, like just sit with yourself and question all these stories, and kind of differentiate the made up ones and the real ones.
Right.
That is a good place to start. And I personally, I've had a very interesting journey in the beginning, and I've heard many FAs like talking in the school also, like in the beginning it's like overwhelming. There is this overwhelming emotions when you are like discovering yourself, and that's okay, like that's normal. And sometimes when people get into this overwhelming state, they'll quit and they will
Yeah.
not continue their journey. But I would suggest, like, just like stay with that. It'll be uncomfortable for like a few months, but then it'll get better and better. And once you kind of unravel that story, and like once you're efficient in like figuring out the story and reality, I would say like just focus on your needs, and then you're gonna have like a beautiful life. And it's like years of conditioning and trauma that you're trying to fix in like a few months. If you get overwhelmed in the beginning, just give yourself some time and take it at your pace. Like I was just rushing in. Like I was just okay. I want to like today. If I can like become secure today, that would be great. But sometimes that's not possible. So give yourself
Um,
some time. And take it at the pace that you're comfortable with.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's a good reminder. And I think, fearful avoidance, when they decide they're going to do something, they go like 150% into it,
Yeah.
which can be good for some things, like, I don't know, the gym or at your job sometimes. But for this type of healing work, like you said, you're undoing sort of like a lifetime of core wounds. So this can kind of bring up a lot of emotion and feelings. And it's sort of something you got to not decide, if things are getting a little too much, to pull back a bit, stop, take time, and then go back to it. I don't think, just trying to plow through it will be productive, but definitely that's something to keep in mind. And I'm glad you brought that up.
I just wanted to pop in here and let you know we are doing a 7-day free trial to the All Access Membership Pass at PDS, which means you get access to literally everything inside of the school. And this includes the 4 live webinars I do with our students every single week. And on top of that, you get access to all of our different courses. We have over 55 different courses on relationships, communication, boundaries, emotional mastery, guilt and shame, learning your needs, so many different facets that are really important to master our lives and feel really good about our lives going forward. And last but not least, there's a daily community event. We have trained facilitators and coaches who are in there doing that work, showing up to support you on your journey every single day. Please join me on the other side. Come check it out. See if it's a fit for you. I'd love to see you there. Go ahead and sign up by clicking the link in the description box below.
So I wanted to talk to you about your coaching and your coaching experience in your practice. Is there an area that you specialize in or that you focus on specifically?
Yeah, so I am focused on the career area of your life. So I'm doing similar type of coaching, but specifically for the career area of your life. And I do like one-on-one coaching. And the principles are like pretty much the same. Like I help you figure out like your limiting beliefs and core wounds and your needs, but specifically to grow in the career area of your life.
Like that. And what would you say specifically? And I know this was an issue for me in the past, but if someone is having a hard time finding a career that they're passionate about, what is something that you could kind of leave with our viewers today? What advice would you give to somebody who knows that maybe they're not happy with what they're doing, or maybe they're a young person and they're deciding what they want to do for life? What's some advice you can give about finding your passion and career?
Yeah, I think the way I go about it is basically, in the beginning of the session, you kind of ask them to um tell me, like I ask the clients to tell me their like dream career. Like, suppose like nothing is like stopping you, money, geography, nothing is like stopping you. And not like you're not listening to anyone's judgment or anything like that. What is a like dream career? And they'll kind of give you a beautiful picture of a career that is in alignment with your personality needs.
Yeah.
So that's how I start. And in the beginning, there'll be a lot of limiting beliefs and core wounds and all that, which are like kind of pulling them back
Hmm.
um, from achieving something. So initially, like tackle on that core wounds and limiting beliefs and the stories that you have in your mind, like, oh, I want to do this, but like,
Right.
like try to focus on that but. And then later you kind of go to the needs part of it, like identify what your personality need is, and then you kind of understand your top personality needs. Like Thais often talks about it, like when you have a career which is in alignment with your personality needs, it won't feel like a job. It'll feel like just an extension of your life, right? And then and then there's a reality part. Like you might want to have like a job which is like not in demand at the moment. Like there are certain jobs which are like ultimately all of us want to make like a living and make money and grow in your career and all that. Sometimes maybe your dream career is not what the world needs at this moment. Like, there is this
Yeah.
whole revolution of AI happening, right? Like maybe your dream career might be replaced by AI sometime in future. But then the ideal thing that you would do over there is like, these are my dream job, and these are the roles, these are the needs that I would like to meet, and these are the jobs that are available to me right now, or which is good in demand, and then kind of find an overlap. This itself is like a whole process where you kind of map what you want and what the world needs in a way, and
Right.
then find a super imposed image of like, okay, so you might have to sacrifice on something. Like at the end, like you might find you maybe like you discovered that you have a huge need for autonomy and say independence, and a career that you can choose is probably becoming like a business person. But then when you become a business person, you kind of like have certain things that you might want to sacrifice, certain skill set that you want to develop which you might not have at the moment, and then that is your job to kind of hone in those skills and develop them during the process.
I love
So
that.
yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I know for my own life, I was handed the book of, I don't know, 50 different careers you can choose from. And
Uh-huh.
I didn't think I resonated with any of them. And I was really nervous because I was like, okay, I'll just start trying different careers in different fields. And I've had so many different careers, but a lot of them I only lasted a year or two because it just didn't feel right. So if I sort of, if somebody told me early on, like, what would you do if there were no limitations on yourself, on whatever job you want, then you can start to see, okay, what do I like to do? What do I like to do for fun when I'm not working? What do I put my attention on? What conversations do I like to have? You know where I'm going with this. Like the needs course asks you those questions. And it really
Yeah.
brings out, okay, what does my subconscious mind naturally trying to push me towards and sending me signals? And when I feel really uplifted and passionate, what are the things I'm doing when that happens? And then if you can tie that into a job, like, whew, like you're going to be pretty successful because like you touched on, you'll have that like natural energy. You'll feel satisfied. You'll be more present. There's
Mhm.
just so many good things, and it just seems like more doors open up to possibilities when you know what your natural needs are. So that's
And
something.
you might find something like unique to you. It might not be something that is like existing in the world right now, or maybe like
Yeah,
not in the exact way that you wanted, but you can create your own career. You know, that's what I like about like designing your life the way you want, right?
yeah,
And yeah, that can also happen. You might find like a new career for yourself, which is absolutely suited for
100%.
you.
When you're sort of given that permission to open your mind into like, looking into where do you think there's a need, like, because we all
Yeah.
have things where we know like, oh, I know this is inefficient, I could do this better, or I know there's something I can do to improve this, like, but if we actually like went for it and put our effort and energy into that, who knows, like sky's the limit. And if you're thinking there's a need for something or the way that something can be improved, I guarantee you like hundreds or thousands of people are thinking the same thing. So yeah, it's inspiring just to know that, you can sort of take it wherever you want to go. It's awesome. Okay, so In your training with integrated attachment theory, where you train with Tice, is there any tool within that you learned that really works well with clients as far as career coaching goes?
Yeah, I think the in the beginning, when the client is coming to me in the very first stages of maybe like the first 2 or 3 sessions, the story questioning this. So most of my clients are FA. I think like you kind of naturally gravitate towards FAs, but
Yeah.
yeah. So the questioning the stories helps in the beginning, like when they say that like, hey, I want to do this, but like, okay, then I'm helping them to question their own stories. And then later, like in the next maybe like the third or fourth session, they'll be like, oh, I know it's a story. They are like telling me instead of me asking them questions.
Nice.
Um, so that helps in the beginning, like the storytelling or story questioning part, which is the emotional processing tool. And then later I'd introduce a needs course. And cold wounds is also like, it's kind of like parallel, it goes in parallel. And then I would say like when the storytelling ends, that I introduce the core wounds to like questioning that, and that helps. And then once they kind of work on some of the core ones, you see this major shift in their attitude and the way they talk and everything. And then I introduce the needs part where they are finding the true version of themselves.
Mhm.
That's it. That's how it's structured. But it obviously changes for each client. But these are I would say, the three tools that I use with like almost all the clients to discover who they are.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So I wanted to shift into like relationship talk a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you think are some of the most sort of common issues that you hear people struggling with, and why do you think this is so hard for so many people?
Yeah, like from so like even though like that's an interesting thing. Like some most of the clients that come to me, like they come with a career issue. Like
Right.
I want to fix this problem in my career. But then the deeper you get into the conversations about career, sometimes the root cause is like something is not working in their relationship. And then we kind of touch about like relationships also. It becomes like a whole package. Like life it is like it's gonna like overlap, like your career is
Sure.
gonna affect your relationship and vice versa.
Mhm.
So the most common thing, like maybe it's because most of my clients are FAs, the boundaries, like speaking up for themselves. They usually set boundaries when like without like after like not setting up boundaries for multiple times, then their FA will like put a hard boundary which is not good for the relationship also. That's what I see the most. And also like they just get like engulfed in the relationship, and then like everything else like falls apart, and they feel like, okay, this relationship is not working and this is the reason for everything else, so let me just put it aside.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the pattern I see most with my clients, that not having boundaries. The boundary is not just with the other person, like even for themselves, like having that mental boundary. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, great answer. And then as far as just relationships overall, what would you say to the audience? What is something that's like really important to keep a relationship in a healthy place? Like what's something that's an ingredient that needs to be there in order to have a healthy relationship?
Yeah, that's an interesting. So I can talk about like what I do like in my relationship. I think the most beautiful thing about my current relationship is ability to communicate. Like,
Mm,
whether it's good or bad, like that's also important. Like you have to talk about what's going good in your relationship, and also like certain things that is not working out for you. In the beginning, like when we started dating, we had this like monthly check-ins, like, we'll come together on a weekend, like every month, and then like what's going good, what would you like to change, and what would you like to continue. It's like the start, stop, continue kind of a thing. So I work in the both of us work in the tech industry, and there's a lot of project management things that are happening. And we
yeah.
kind of implemented like a version of that in our life. So
Is it
start, stop, continue.
the waterfall or the agile method?
It's more agile.
Or- So like what was he on, was that something you suggested and he was like, wow, like I'm on board with this? Or is this something that he might have been doing in previous relationships? Like was he open to it right away?
So this particular thing about like monthly check-ins is something that I suggested, and he was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I mean, let's just do it. That's amazing."
Nice.
Like now we don't do it. Like now it comes like you don't have to wait for that month to kind of talk about things.
Right.
Like okay, something is not working out. Um, like now, then we are able to communicate. Like, hey, I would like you to change this, or maybe like I'm not liking it when you do this,
Yeah.
and then we come up with like a solution that I have to give credit to my partner for that. Like every time there is either me or him like raising an issue, the next thing that he's thinking about is like um how can we change it? How can I change so that it doesn't happen?
Right.
So and then we think about like solutions instead of like sitting with the problem.
Right. Right.
And also like appreciating like, hey, I like what you did for me that day. So I would say the most important thing is communication. And it kind of like when you have good communication, there is obviously more transparency, more trust,
Right.
and more like, either you're appreciating both, right? So more um, love, more, affection. Everything happens when you have good communication. So more understanding. So if I can just give like if I can tell you like this is the only thing that you need to do in a relationship, that would be communication.
Right. Right. I'm just curious. Such a beautiful process, and I know it's very valuable. Is there like a is there is it, does the partner say, hey, it's nice to say what's going well, like that's going to be nice feelings, and we're gonna have a fun time sharing that. Is there like the partner saying, listen, when you start sharing the things that are not going well or that you're not happy with, I want you to know that whatever you share with me, I'm not gonna like get angry, or I'm not gonna reject you or abandon you or make you feel shame. Like, is there sort of a vibe, or like is it communicated that this is sort of like a safe sharing space, and whatever you share with me, I'd rather hear what's going on for you, and then we can work on it rather than worry that you're going to say something that's going to upset me.
Yeah, I think that's the in the beginning, the process of like having that time. And that's also something that again, that's again a project management thing. There is a formal feedback session, right?
Mhm.
So you're expecting like, and you're not telling, hey, something like you are this horrible person. That's not what's happening there. It's more like, hey, these are the things that are bothering me in this relationship. It's more about me than me blaming you.
Right.
So that helped in the beginning. And there are like incidents like, personally for me, like certain things that he mentioned, I was like, okay, that's not what I am, or, that's not who I am, and that's not what I'm trying to do. And there are instances where it did feel bad, but then the intention of that whatever time was not to blame each other but to find solutions. So when you find solutions, you're not really blaming the other person, like this is a problem in the relationship, let's just find solutions. So
Yeah.
that's how we trained ourselves like right now, because of all that communication happened pretty early in the relationship. Like now when if something is communicated in real time, um, I know that this person is not communicating or saying something bad about me or this relationship. Not this is not to criticize me. This is for improvement of the relationship, which is essentially good for me also. So
Yeah.
um, we've reached that place like now. In the beginning, yeah, there were like instances where okay, I didn't feel good, or okay, why are you pointing this to me? But
Yeah.
I think you train yourself enough to reach that place.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's really lovely. Okay, so I wanted to ask you a little bit about like rituals. Is there anything that you're doing daily that sort of keeps you in a good place in your job and your relationship and just your everyday life? Any rituals that you're doing every day?
I think the everyday ritual, like I try to meditate like every day in the morning as soon as I wake up,
Mm-hmm.
have a cup of coffee, and then like I meditate for like 10, 15 minutes. That's something I've been doing for like a very, very long time. And after that, I think like rituals change um, based on the phase that I'm in. Like, sometimes there was a phase when I was doing, a high intensity workout. Like now we are into like rock climbing. So we kind of like need for like physical exercise is not just like for your body, right? It's for your mind as well. That's something we try to do now. Yeah. And then it changes. Like there was a phase when I go for drives for my own mental health, mental health. Yeah.
Sure.
But the meditation is something which I do every
Yeah.
single day.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay, so we're coming towards the end of today's interview. Just a couple more questions. I was wondering if you could share a tool or a habit or a strategy with the audience that can help them improve either their lives or their relationships with their loved ones.
I would say every single tool that TDS is offering, like the emotional processing tool, the core wounds reprogramming, auto suggestion, visualization, the needs scores, everything is useful, but it's important to pick the right tool depending on the stage that you are in your healing. The early days, I think the emotional processing tool is very effective, but
Mhm.
once you become really good with your story, questioning your stories and regulating your emotions, you know, I mean, the core wounds also like kind of happens parallelly. Then right now, my favorite tool is like need. Like when the needs tool, when I'm doing something, okay, what is a need that I'm trying to meet is what I'm asking myself. So, yeah,
Wonderful, wonderful. And I know you mentioned to me you might be doing a career switch of your own. Do you want to let
yeah.
us know about that?
Yes. So right now I work at Meta as a data engineer, and I'm planning to pivot completely into coaching, specifically career coaching. And I'm planning, to go back to school, get some formal education, and continue practice coaching as a side thing. So getting my education and coaching at the same time. Yeah, that's like I'm pivoting full time into coaching, and I'm excited for that.
Oh yeah, for sure. That is exciting. Okay, and lastly, how can people get in touch with you if they did want to work with you, and especially in the career space? How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, I do have a website out there which is called www.grahamahout.com. So you can book an appointment with me either for just one-on-one career coaching or interpersonal relationship coaching directly from the website. I also have like an Instagram page if you wanna, um, you know, connect with me on Instagram. That's also available.
Yeah, wonderful. And we'll put those up in the show notes so people can contact you there.
Sure.
Athira, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your story, and just all the lovely things you had to say. It was really informative, and I hope you enjoyed the podcast today.